Hello, and welcome to Grey Matter Talks Tech, a podcast for dev and IT enthusiasts who want to hear insights, tips, and stories from the experts. I'm your host for this episode, Leanne Bevan, Vendor Marketing Manager at Grey Matter, and today I'll be joined by developer evangelist Jamie Maguire. We'll discuss his career in development, the top trends, AI, and advice for those of you who are new to the industry. Hi, Jamie. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Leanne. Thanks for having me.
So, to start off, please could you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Of course. Yeah, my name's Jamie Maguire. I'm a Microsoft MVP in Artificial Intelligence, Pluralsight author on LinkedIn, learning instructor. I'm a software architect and developer by trade who basically build software on the Microsoft stack. And I've been in that area for a little over 20 years now. Yeah.
Oh, nice. So, what drew you to a career in development and Microsoft specifically?
Okay, my journey goes back, like a way back, like as a kid. I used to get magazines and stuff with code listings, like back in the day,
Yeah.
and I always thought it was cool how you could like, type those in and create stuff. And I was very young when that started, and I just liked to build and create stuff, and that evolved into uh, an interest academically at school and college and university courses and degrees and diplomas and stuff. And eventually, those hobbies and studies turned into a career path, which was an exciting thing for me. The fact that I could earn a living by
Yeah.
basically working on my craft and my hobby.
Nice. So, what sort of courses did you study then to learn your craft?
Yeah, there were. At the time, it was a diploma in software development, which took me a couple of years. Moved on to a degree in computer science, which I actually exited in my degree year,
Yeah.
and then and then took uh, a year out, still building in the
Yeah.
background, and tried to get like a small hardware business off the ground. That didn't quite work, and then I decided to go back and get my degree. Just around about that time, I was offered a 2 year, effectively apprenticeship, right? Um,
Awesome.
yeah, which is very unusual
Yeah.
around about the late 90s and especially around about 2000, like the dot-com bubble was busting
Mhm.
a little bit. And I took that 2 year gig, which basically gave me my start in the industry as a software developer, right? Building with Microsoft technologies. A little bit further on down the line, I decided to pursue a master's degree, but by that point, I had 10 years experience in industry, and I'd done that on evenings and weekends, and that was more focused on basically machine learning, right?
Yeah.
Towards the end, in particular Bayesian theorem, text analytics, and sentiment analysis, and that was my journey, as I say, into AI. So it wasn't entirely linear, but like,
Mm.
it's been a common theme throughout, like blending studies with professional experience.
Yeah. So, with you kind of focusing around Microsoft technologies, was .NET the first programming language you used, or did you do something else back when you were at school?
Yeah, so it's skill and doing it personally. It was like simple languages like Basic and stuff like that. Okay,
Mhm.
but professionally, as I started to enter the industry, it was building on top of the .NET framework from the very
Yeah.
first version, using C Sharp and ASP.NET, and all that stuff that sits in that particular stack from front end right through to back end. Initially building web applications, and then moving on into API development and systems integrations, and done a lot of work in public health and about halfway startups, and then about halfway through it, and quite a lot of work in the criminal justice arena in Northern America, and throughout parts of Europe. Again, building with the Microsoft stack, and just getting like a whole load of experience. But like, building on the Microsoft stack is pretty much my bread and butter.
Nice. So what sort of applications were you making for these organizations?
It varied, Leanne. So
Yeah.
there could be web applications that help manage say patients through from admission, treatment, and discharge. Other solutions in the criminal justice space involved inmate and offender management. So from the point of arrest, pre-trial, Department of Corrections out until parole and probation. These were like some of the bigger products and projects. At the flip side, working with startups. Okay.
Yeah, that must have been
Uh,
exciting.
yeah. So they are, so getting on one side all the rigor, all the process, and the governance around like enterprise type solutions,
Mm.
but then on the flip side, working with the rapid development approach in a startup and scrappy environment.
Yeah.
It was good to get that contrast and compare both experiences. Built and launched my own for a little while.
Yeah.
Learned a ton of things, what to do, what not to do, when it's relevant to cut corners, when it's not. And yeah, so lots of different experiences there.
Do you have a preference then between those two, like the startup style and the more traditional style?
It's a good question.
Tricky one.
It's a tricky one. I think it depends on. I tend to think we live in seasons, so
Yeah.
like there's seasons for everything, and it depends like where you're at personally, is as well.
Mm.
I think everybody, for listeners, anybody who's considering maybe starting out in this industry or not sure what to do, is like try and get experience of all of them.
Mm.
I don't have like any real favorite, but I think often what can happen is uh, there's a definite point, say like in a startup journey, like the first like years, like say 1 to 3, are some of the most uh, frenetic and stressful,
Mm.
and then things maybe taper down a little bit after that, and then you can start to bring in more process and standardize things. Um, so there's pros and cons for both, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, it just depends where you're at in your experience and career path.
Yeah, of course. And you mentioned that you started your own startup. What do you think was the biggest takeaway from that you found, either personally or professionally?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things was uh, how can I say, like the concept of sunk costs. Like sometimes not
Mm.
being so invested in one idea, and having the wherewithal just to say, right, we're going to shut that down and
Yeah.
then try something else for 90 days. And that was like a learning. Another learning was, this sounds really obvious, right? But stick to what you know and what you're good at,
Yeah.
right? And then off the back of that is like outsource when you can. If you can outsource, that is.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to do everything yourself because like you might not have the capital, and like you might be bootstrapping a particular project, so it can be hard to outsource. Um, and had mixed success. It's peaks and troughs.
Yeah.
Um, so those were some of the learnings, I would say.
Awesome. Thank you. So, just kind of thinking of your career as a whole now, Are there any particular developer tools or features within the Microsoft stack or other tools that you use that are your particular favorites, and why are they your favorites to use?
Yeah. So right now, this is probably a pretty obvious thing that I'm about to say, but like we know, like AI over the last couple of years has just exploded, right?
Massively so.
And massively, massively, and there's a lot of hype out there, but there's also a lot of substance as well, right?
Yeah.
And one of my favorite SDKs at the moment is it's an open source SDK from Microsoft called Semantic Kernel, and Semantic Kernel makes it easier for you to pull in small language model or large language model integrations to an existing application. Okay,
Hmm.
and it helps you build really quickly, right? And it means that you can build product.
Yeah.
Okay, because listen, not everything has to be artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
But you might have like a really core solid product, but you just want to augment it with some language model integrations. Well, Semantic Kernel makes that super easy. So I'm using that and advocating for that actually, especially over the last say 6 to 9 months. And I basically documented my journey on my own blog, right? So listeners can get to grips with it super quick. And it just accelerates the development process for, say, maybe a developer who is not well versed in AI at the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is one of my favorite SDKs at the minute.
Awesome. And would you say like productivity and time is probably one of the bigger challenges for developers these days and people like yourself as well?
Massively, yeah. And I think what happens with experience is you as you go through your career, you have to develop a radar for what is going to be a passing fad
Mm.
and what actually is going to be around for a little while. It's still hard though to make those judgment calls, because like a part of what I'm often asked to do is advise and guide on a particular strategy in terms of like a technology choice.
Yeah.
So that you can only really do that when you've been in the industry for a little while and you get a scent for what might be around. How can you do that? Well, you can check out, like, see how active the support community is for a particular SDK, how much content is out there, what are people building with it, how frequent are the updates, um, does it align with what's happening in the market at the moment? Like, there's
Yeah.
several and multiple signals that you can check um, to help you make those decisions.
Of course. And when you yourself are kind of looking for what's next, or any tips and tricks or anything like that, where do you go to find that information? Are there any particular blogs or influencers or specialists that you go to, or any events or anything like that?
So a few different channels, really,
Mm.
like the good old fashioned, old school developer newsletter and blog,
Yeah.
right, from multiple vendors or a industry or a technology stack that I'm interested in, and that's one. GitHub is another place where I'll check out like repos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Occasionally, through that, you will get an idea of there might be like a Discord community.
Of course.
Um, yeah, there you get breaking news in some of those. There are like your regular like social channels as well, um, and just engaging with other people in the community actually who are
Yeah.
building and shipping cool stuff. Those are some of the other areas really that I tend to check.
Cool. And what trends have you been seeing lately, and like how has the industry changed over the years that you've been in the industry for?
Yeah, so that's a solid question. I would say that the last 5 years have been some of the most exciting in my 20 plus year career. There's been so much innovation, particularly in the conversational AI space and
Yeah.
in the AI space in general. Because for the longest time, it felt like there wasn't much really happening in the industry. Um, and with the advent of OpenAI, uh, investments in small language models, large language models, and this concept of natural language becoming like an IDE of sorts.
Yeah.
So it's like this technology is some of the most exciting that I've been working with over the last few years. Um,
Awesome.
and a lot of software development now, like some of the mystery and the intrigue around that is being removed, I think, because people
Yeah.
can talk using natural language to a machine and then generate like minimal viable products, proof of concepts, and then say, hey, this is roughly what we need to do. And then hand that over, say, maybe to an engineering team or developers to build that and flesh it out.
Awesome. So you don't feel scared at the moment then that AI and robots are going to start taking over the world and development and stuff yet? At least not yet.
Nah, I don't. I don't. Like we've seen it before, haven't we?
Yeah.
Like industry evolves and adapts, and there's new problems to solve. I do think there will be an impact, maybe say on entry level positions,
Yeah.
which is the industry always needs new blood. So I think that's a challenge that has to be tackled.
Mm.
Because like with somebody with like say a medium or senior type level of experience, they can like dramatically improve their output by pulling in like multiple AI services. Personally, like I've saved hours of time each week on
Mm.
tasks by using Gen AI.
Yeah. Even me in my role in marketing, it's so useful. It saves so much time creating content or coming up with ideas or looking for information. It is really, really useful. It's just making sure it's not used in the wrong way, obviously, in terms of like security and cyber attacks and other ways it's being used. That's where the worry is.
Yeah, like there's so many tangible use cases for Gen AI right now.
Mm,
Content creation, ideation, document summarization, transcribing automatically uh, speech to text, and then generating a summary of that. Massive, massive opportunities in performance improvement and productivity improvement.
yeah. So, other than AI, are there any other developer trends that you're seeing a lot of at the moment?
That's the biggest one, right? And I think another trend is the it's kind of connected, right? And it's the disruption of the developer workflow with as a result of these new technologies.
Yeah,
Okay, I think that is a development and testing pattern that because some of these things are non-deterministic and that you don't how can I say it's not quite a binary output, something works or it doesn't. Some outputs can be subjective, so I think that those sort of situations require a change in mindset. um, I think that developer workflows are probably going to change. Like the biggest thing at the moment right now is agentic AI, right? I
mm,
think that the dust hasn't fully settled on that, right? Um, I think we're going to see like that happen as we go into like Q2 and Q3 of this year.
yeah,
Um, but it's mainly AI at the moment that I see.
of course. And um, for developers in general, are there any other challenges that you kind of see people facing right now, either yourself in your own role or people in the community that you speak to?
I think the the one of the biggest challenges, right? We kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. Is that there is so much information out there,
Yeah.
Okay, there's too much, right? And trying to find signal in a lot of the noise is a challenge, right? That I think that's going to continue to be a challenge for
Yeah.
many people, and people are looking for breadcrumbs and playbooks of uh, that answer like a bunch of different questions, like where can I use AI? Should I be using AI? What technologies are going to be around? Like some technologies are only around for a year or two, and then it's on to the next thing, and which is it might be okay for some industries and some projects, but it might not be suitable for others.
Yeah.
That's a challenge if you're making medium to long term investment plays, and you're trying to extrapolate particular metrics. I think that's going to continue to be a challenge. Um, what's going to be around? What should we invest in? And then upskilling and learning. So learning and development is another area. We've only got like 24 hours in a day, but
Yeah, of course.
we've got a multitude of responsibilities, right? We've got to deliver business as usual type value, but equally remain competitive, we have to stay abreast of current developments. That feeds into what we were just discussing earlier. It's like, well,
Mm.
with the limited time that I have for learning and development, where should I look? Who should I listen to? What should I invest in? These are some of that's a challenge for, that's a challenge for myself, right?
Yeah.
But it's equally a challenge for my peers in the industry. Again, because there's so much chatter out there.
Mm.
Um, and I think as people go on their AI journey, responsible AI and security is going to be big.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. Yeah, security seems to be in the headlines all the time at the moment
mhm,
as well.
yeah.
So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that develops and how AI affects that more as well. Um, you mentioned a lot of stuff about AI. Is there any particular industries that you think will see real value from having AI within their development?
It'll be. There are many actually. Like
Hmm.
I was speaking to somebody very recently in the legal profession.
Yeah.
They're using it to get summaries of like many legal papers. So like the legal profession,
Yeah.
I think is an obvious industry and sector, and like any any industry where are orgs that have like vast quantities of data that must be processed, right,
Mm.
and analyzed. Like those anywhere that there is a situation where information is being shared and a cost for that transaction is being applied,
Of course. Yeah.
like there's massive opportunities there, right? Because
Sure.
loads of that can be automated, right? That like finance, legal, healthcare, um, the SMB space. There are, technologies helping people do more with less resource. So, like, yeah, there's a whole variety of sectors, really, I think.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how it helps everyone going forward. You mentioned earlier about sentiment analysis and some projects that you're working on. Could you tell us a bit more about what all of that is?
Yeah, that was quite a number of years ago. I have moved on from that.
Mm.
However, it's yeah, that was all around text analytics and Bayesian theorem and basically ingesting data to determine the general feeling being expressed in that data. And the way that you can do that is by implementing something called the Bayesian classifier, right?
Nice.
And you train it with examples of positive intent, or you train it with examples of indifferent and negative intent, right? However, like you can now do that by using a language model, right?
Mm.
You no longer have to uh, go through all that coding and configuration and deployment. You can just send an API request to a language model and say, hey, can you tell me like the general feeling of this particular stream of text? Right. That's how, like in the space of let's say 5-6 years, how fast things have moved along.
Yeah.
Before, what would have taken quite a bit of work can now be achieved within a single API call for a few pennies or a few cents.
Yeah, it's just amazing, isn't it? How quickly it's all happened. Even technology in the last 20 years. So what sort of projects are you working on now then?
So mixed bag. A core set of work is modernization and API development. Another project involves semantic kernel and implementing a RAG type solution against Elasticsearch to help basically developers build and ship product quicker. I've just released a project with Pluralsight,
Nice.
and yeah, just a couple of weeks ago. So software development, consulting, contracting, technical content creation. With partnered up, as I say, with Pluralsight to release that course. So a mixed bag, really.
Yeah. And you mentioned community earlier, and you're quite heavily involved in the dev community. Do you just love to like kind of share your knowledge and expertise and also learn from others? Is that kind of quite important to you?
Yeah, it is. And it's, I've got a personal blog, right? I'm not trying to like promote it, right? But I do, right? And like one of the reasons that I have that, okay, is I'm basically writing notes to myself,
Yeah.
right? For future reference. And what I find is that if I can take something that I've learned, built, or had to use, and then articulate it in a written article or a very short form video, then it means that I've fully understood it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the whole rationale behind that website, right? Second order effect of that is that it grew my network,
Mm.
and it built out a series of connections in a roundabout sort of way, created an inbound marketing channel for me personally as a person,
Yeah.
which was never the intention. However, that's what happened, and then that spiraled out into community type activities like we're chatting together on this podcast.
Mm.
Um, there are things, so there's a lot of the things that occur from like putting yourself out there can be very positive.
Mm.
A lot of serendipitous opportunities can come your way as a result of just engaging with the community,
Yeah,
which is a good thing.
definitely. And so what advice would you give to um, budding developers, whether they're starting in school right now or maybe they've come to it later in life? Are there any tips that you would give to them?
Sure. I I think it depends on where you're at. If you're just coming out of school or you're halfway through college or university, or the good thing now about industry is that I see like many job postings and contracts and stuff, and like the degree requirement is not there for a lot of them anymore.
Mm.
Right. I think that opens the door up for like many other types of people. That said, you still have to show up with something,
Yeah.
right? So I think if you're not going down the academic route, right, get yourself a domain name, get yourself a GitHub account, and set up a few repos, and then start building and shipping like prototypes, content, articles, demo tutorials on YouTube or wherever else you might want to cross post that content. That will be a good way for you to get on people's radar if you do not have, let's say, the quote unquote credentials,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
If you don't want to get down the academic route, you can still get certifications and stuff. Get yourself on Microsoft Learn and do it that way. And that though doing that will create a series of signals for somebody who's just trying to break into the industry that maybe doesn't want to do, like say, 4 or 5 years academic. type
Yeah.
studies. That would be one way. I think that if for somebody who's maybe like say halfway through their career, they want to maybe transition into a different tech stack, is just get stuck in, right? Just
Yeah.
start just set some time aside and kind of similar to before, like start shipping your thoughts, ideas, experiments online, um, and just be consistent, okay? Because I've got to say that uh, I've run this blog for I think 6 or 7 years, and then and I've tried to keep a consistent cadence.
Yeah.
I never done it for the clicks or the views or the impressions.
No.
Years 1 to 4, like hardly anybody was looking at it, right? But
Yeah.
on year 4, it just seemed to pop. Okay,
Yeah.
and getting like 10 to 20,000 views a month, and that was just by showing up.
Yeah.
Just, yeah, and if you can put yourself out there, if you've got a little bit more experience, then uh, uh, you could be known as the person for technology X, Y, or Z, right?
Yeah.
When you show up consistently, people will say that's the guy or that's the girl that does that thing. We need help with that thing. Let's talk. That can be a way to create a nice on ramp for somebody who's maybe looking to transition a little bit into maybe a different direction.
Yeah. It sounds as if, as well, the developer community is very welcoming to people that want to learn or share skills. I've noticed it at events myself. Like, people love to come to these events because sometimes that's the only time they get the chance to speak to anyone else, because sometimes they might be the only developer or they might be part of only a very small group. So it is really lovely to see when they share skills, share case studies and use cases of what they're doing with their pieces of software and app development. It's really nice to see.
Yeah, because if you come from a smallish town like I did, like not many people were doing this stuff, right?
No.
Hardly anybody. In fact, I never used to tell anybody that I'd done it, right?
Really.
when I was typing the thing from the back of the magazine, no, I'm not going to tell anybody that stuff. So, but yeah, like the events, yeah, the community is generally very welcoming. Like, unfortunately, I don't get the chance to attend many events in person just because of like conflicting, um,
Yeah.
priorities. So majority of the stuff does have to be on online typically. Um, but any time that I have, like everybody's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really good. And I think there's lots of local communities now that people can join as well, let alone more like global or national events that they can attend and workshops.
Yeah, there's meetups and stuff. There's regular and more localized meetups, so you can find an area that you might be interested in. It might be DevOps.
Yeah.
Um, it might be say I don't know, power apps, or it might be AI. Like there's a whole get take a look online and figure out what's in your region or your area, and then get stuck in.
And likewise, online, there's lots of forums, there's GitHub and other sources that people can refer to for information and connection and answers to questions if they've got any issues, I guess, as well. And then just kind of talking more broadly again about your career and development. Are there any memorable stories that you have as a developer, be it an interesting bug you came across, a funny client, an exciting experience, or something else that you think's quite interesting to share?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I'm just trying to think of one that's maybe relevant or acceptable. um, there was I, I remember once there was I was either on a call or in a meeting. I can't remember, right? But we were going live on a. This is quite a number of years ago, right?
Yeah,
But it always stuck in my mind, and was as I say, we were going live with this particular phase of a big project, and I remember like I'd said or somebody else had said, "Listen, we need guarantees of like a certain set of things," and the client turned around and said, "Listen, man, like if you want a guarantee, go buy a washing machine." Like, and yeah, I'm like, right, okay. like, like, as a contractor, a consultant at the time, like, what do you say to that? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
What did you say?
I, I, uh, I, I, I think I just, I thought I think a bunch of different things, but I can't remember what my exact response was because it was quite a few years ago. But
Yeah.
it would have been diplomatic, put it that way.
Yeah, of course. Do you have any others? You said you had a few, or are they a bit
I,
non-PC?
uh, there's 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 that. Yeah, we can save that for a round two, maybe. We'll apply a social filter right now. And
No problem at all. Well, thank you ever so much for joining us, Jamie, and sharing your insights on your career and developer trends. It's been really interesting. I particularly found all the stuff around AI really, really interesting because it is everywhere at the moment, as you said. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
pleasure.
And for those listening, Grey Matter supplies a number of developer tools such as Microsoft and services. And you can head to our website, greymatter.com, to find out more about what we offer and how we can help you. Thank you ever so much for listening. And if you enjoyed the episode, make sure to subscribe and tune into the next one. Bye for now.